to process the thousands of Afghans trying to flee. Joining me now is Republican Congressman Michael McCaul. He is the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. You in talking about this report and this inquiry that has gone on for a year now, you've accused the Biden administration of a complete lack and failure to plan. What do you see as the biggest mistake, Congressman?
Well, there are several. I think not heeding the warnings of the intelligence community that I was warned by, or his top generals in the Pentagon, about the dire situation on the ground, the imminent threat that Kabul was going to fall, the entire country was imploding, and yet the State Department and White House seemed to have this rosy picture of what was happening, completely devoid of reality. And I think that was the failure to plan anything appropriately. You only had 36 consular officers, as you mentioned. And I think stunningly in the report, we mentioned that the Taliban did offer for the Americans to secure Kabul for purposes of the evacuation along with our NATO allies. This would have completely changed the way this was done. Instead, that was declined by the White House, and then they left the perimeter to the Taliban to be in charge. And you saw a year ago today Kabul fall. You saw people trying to get on the wheels of the airplane taking off. You saw the helicopter leaving the rooftop of the embassy that President Biden said would never happen like in Vietnam, but it did. And then most sadly, we saw the suicide bomber get through the Taliban perimeter and kill 13 American servicemen and women and injure almost 50 others in that HKIA chaos. That didn't have to happen, and it could have been more orderly. But every step of the way, they didn't want to listen to the truth.
One startling aspect, and it's something that Clarissa Ward was just actually speaking to, is what's happened to women and girls in the aftermath. But one startling aspect that I read was from the Trump ambassador for global women's issues, Kelly Currie, saying that only approximately 25% of those evacuated during the NEO in Afghanistan were women and girls. And saying, to put this figure in context, historically, women and girls represent more than half of emergency refugee outflows. Why is that?
This is the saddest story about the evacuation. We're all the girls and women left behind. I personally got 4 busloads of girls, students at a music academy in Kabul. Thank God we got them out. But to your point, 75% did not. They referred to it as Schindler's List. The ones that got out on the list survived, and the ones that did not are tortured, beaten, and killed. And unfortunately for the girls and for the women, they are now living under Sharia law that they've never lived under in their lifetime. I think this is one of the saddest stories out there, and it's hard for me. It's heartbreaking to see it, and we could have helped them get out of that country, and now they're stuck there.
I do want to put up for everyone what the responses from the Biden administration to your report. From the National Security Council, spokesperson saying that the report is riddled with inaccurate characterizations, cherry-picked information, and false claims. And the spokesperson for the State Department pushing back that they haven't been forthcoming with information, saying we've provided over 150 briefings to members and staff on Afghanistan since the NEO, covering a range of topics. This is clear. This is not a bipartisan report that you put out. This is put out by the Republicans on the committee. How do you respond to people who will dismiss this on its face as a political hit?
We wanted this to be bipartisan, but there was no appetite on the Democratic side. There was initially, Kate, in fairness to my chairman, Chairman Meeks, who I have a lot of respect for, but they got word from the administration, this is not a good news story, and stand down. And so they stopped having any hearings on this. They did want to participate in this investigation. And to the State Department, I would say, if that's true, why didn't you comply with our investigation? Because quite honestly, they did not. They didn't comply at all. And we had many witnesses we wanted to talk to. They wouldn't comply. They would not provide document production as we asked. So the only people we could talk to were people, whistleblowers, people that would talk to us without their names being mentioned. If we get the majority, that's going to change, Kate, and we're going to have the gavel and subpoena power, because the truth at the end of the day needs to come out for the American people and for the people of Afghanistan. So this never happens again. This is the most poorly run evacuation in the history of the United States.
I do want to ask you, though, Trump is mentioned, I looked through a handful of times in this report. This wasn't just a Biden problem, though. I mean, the deal with the Taliban happened under Trump, a deal Peter Bergen described to me as the worst diplomatic agreement in U.S. history. After this investigation, do you think fault goes and blame goes beyond just Joe Biden to the previous administration?
Look, I never had a lot of faith in the Doha agreement. I didn't think you could negotiate with the Taliban. I thought we should have left 2,500 Americans, troops, and NATO 6,000 to stabilize the country and to keep Bagram Air Base, which is our ISR intelligence capability. General McKenzie now has said that we lost 99% of that. And so we can point to Doha. I think it's very interesting when we came across an interview that President Biden did with George Stephanopoulos, where he said, you know what, irrespective of Doha, I was going to get out one way or the other. We portray, I think, the truth of this president who got elected, and from day one, come hell or high water, he was going to get out of Afghanistan. And we can debate whether that was the right decision. But if you're going to do this, Kate, for God's sakes, do it right. And they were in such a rush, and they weren't listening to the intelligence community. Many of the briefings I had in the classified space, stark contrast between State Department, White House, and the intelligence community and the top generals, who, by the way, none of the top generals, including General Milley and McKenzie or the IC, believed that we should have withdrawn. And they thought we should have let this residual force, and that would have been a very different scenario.
There is much in here for many people to read, 100 pages plus. While I have you, Congressman, I want to ask you about the FBI search on Donald Trump's Florida home. I spoke to a Republican last night, as there's so much information still not known. And the way this Republican put it to me is this can end in only one of two ways. Either Donald Trump is indicted or Merrick Garland resigns. That's the stakes at what is at play here. Is that how you see this?
You know, I was a federal prosecutor at the Public Integrity Section, Main Justice. We handled public corruption. You know, you hear the word unprecedented. It's very accurate because a former president of the United States has never had a search warrant, served on his home for classified documents, which the president has the authority to declassify. There's a lot of questions here, Kate, about were they taken out of the White House while he was president? That's what I understand. You know, it's always a last remedy as well to do a search warrant. So what other things were done? And I think Merrick Garland has said that as well. I know a subpoena was served, but they could have gone to the court and had the court order the subpoena. Now this is turning in. I hate to see it turn into a political issue, but that's what it is. Yeah, I can tell you the legal analysis that I have from my prosecutor days, but you know what I see and the perception now is that on the heels of so many years of the Russia collusion to steal dossier, and now he's out of office. Perception's reality, and the perception is, that people are losing faith and trust in our institutions, and no one is more sad about that fact than me and my other alumni of the Department of Justice. I don't want to see that place I used to work at look so political that people will lose faith in our institutions and our democracy. But sadly, I think, Kate, that's exactly what we're seeing right now.
It takes leaders, you included, to speak up, to give the space for that investigation to continue and to tamp down the tone of the rhetoric. This is when leaders are needed like yourself. Congressman, thank you for coming in.
And well, if I could say one last thing, Kate, the affidavit of probable cause in support of the warrant, we need to see that in Congress. On the intelligence committees need to see this as well. If it's such a national security threat, then why weren't we briefed? And we would like to be briefed on that issue.
We'll see what happens next. Congressman, thank you.